our newest doctors. We have 3 Nevis students who have recently completed their medical training in Cuba. I speak of Dr. Crystal Keynes, Dr. Callis Farrell, and Dr. Andrew Carlos Liebert. All would have graduated from La Escuela de Medicina in Cuba on the 21st of July 2021 with degrees in medicine. The Ministry of Health and by extension the Nevis Island Administration congratulates these young professionals. And again we thank the Cuban government and the Cuban people for this assistance in training our citizens. Cuba has a long tradition of providing training to our medical personnel here in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. And many of our young people who could not otherwise afford the high cost of university education have benefited from scholarships to study in Cuba. And that is why we continue to support in a very clear and open way the government and people of Cuba for the good that they have done in the Caribbean, the good they have done globally, and continue to call on our friends in the United States of America to remove this long-standing and anachronistic embargo that they have placed on the Cuban people. I say the Cuban people because ultimately these types of initiatives hurt people. And whilst the effort might have been to get at the Castro regime, the result of it, the consequence of it is to hurt ordinary Cubans. And so we urge again the presidency of Joseph Biden to have another look and to do as his Democratic predecessor did, President Barack Obama, and seek to loosen this terrible blockade of the island of Cuba that has persisted now for 6 decades, far too long. It is a relic of the Cold War. The Cold War has gone, and yet this remains. We must sometimes reflect on world history, that Germany and America were at war, that Germany and England were at war in the First World War and in the Second World War, that we have had Germany divided into East Germany and West Germany, and the infamous Berlin Wall that we all heard about. The Berlin Wall has come down. We have heard of the Cold War, when the USSR, as it then was, and America vied for ideological supremacy in the world. We have heard of communism, and we have heard of capitalism and the contest between those ideals. It must be, I believe, a remarkable thing that Germany and America have made peace, that Germany and England and France have not only made peace, but at one point were all members of the European Union, that sworn and mortal enemies now sit at the table of brotherhood together, that Russia, which was the country behind the USSR, has, for the most part, seen that empire disintegrate, and that different countries have emerged, who are all former Soviet bloc countries. And throughout it all, the world has moved on. So what then of Cuba? And why has Cuba not been allowed to move on, given that the rest of the world, including those who waged war on others, including those who initiated some of the worst atrocities the world has seen, peace has been made, and they now sit at the table of brotherhood. And yet Cuba, the little island off the coast of Florida, is continuing to be pressured, and the Cuban people continuing to be pressured in this way. And it must be a remarkable thing that despite that pressure, Cuba, not from its excess, but from its own need, has said to us as Caribbean people, send us your students. Even in this COVID pandemic and our fight against it, the Cuban Brigade were the first at our doorstep to offer their assistance, even as they themselves in Cuba struggled with COVID. I believe that all of us owe Cuba a debt of gratitude. Let me also thank